Welcome back to another episode of the GM Files, and today we have a former general manager of several teams, been a long time executive in Major League Baseball, the GM of the Expos, Red Sox, and Orioles. Dan Duquette is with me. Dan, thanks for the time, and we have a lot to get into, so let's get into a couple of conversations. First one, everyone always talks about your relationship with Pedro Martinez because you only traded for him twice, so you set the record for that. But before we talk about Pedro, let's talk about the Manny Ramirez signing, because that one, Alex Rodriguez, that signing with the Rangers always gets all the publicity because that was the biggest one. But this Manny Ramirez contract was a organization-changing signing for the Red Sox when you were there.
Well, the Manny contract was a good contract for the Red Sox. When I joined the Red Sox, I wasn't there to sign major league players. The first order of business was to build up the minor leagues and establish an international scouting network, which is what John Harrington asked me to do when I went in there. So we hadn't signed a free agent of significance, and I'm talking about a big long-term deal from the time that I was there in '94 until we signed Manny. We signed some other players that filled out our roster for 1 year or 2 years, but Manny was an impact free agent. And John Harrington, who owned the team at the time, said that I want to sign an impact free agent this offseason. And A-Rod was on the market. Mike Mussina was on the market, Hall of Famer, right?
Yeah.
And Manny Ramirez, he goes, I'd like to sign one of them because John knew that as an entertainment entity, the Red Sox had a great opportunity to expand their cable TV network by keeping the team competitive. And, of course, the fans in Boston, they love the big-time players. So John said, the timing's right. We want to go out and get somebody this offseason. And we ended up signing Manny, and it ended up being a terrific deal for the Red Sox. Manny was there for a long time. He was the staple in the middle of their lineup for a couple of championship teams, including the one that broke the curse. And let's face it, Manny's entertaining. He's fun to be around. He's got an excellent work ethic, and he had a great career in Boston.
So when you were signing Manny and Jeff Moore was the agent, one thing I remember was the cameras following you guys behind the scenes, right, to really show. So what stands out about that now, that when you were going through it at the time?
Well, I didn't know at the time, but that was Jeff Moorehead's swan song from being an agent, because he was going to transition from the agency business over to the administrative side, to the ownership side and the administration of baseball. And so that was his swan song. And part of the terms of engagement to sign Manny Ramirez was I had to agree with Jeff to participate in this ESPN deal, right? Which is the last thing that I really wanted to do as an executive. But I knew it was required if we were going to sign Manny Ramirez. So, I just kind of played along, and ESPN made a big deal out of it, and Jeff made a big deal out of it. And, he got a good contract and a lot of money. Here's a funny story. About 3 weeks after the ESPN story came out, I get a letter from a fan in San Francisco, and it goes, "Dear unmentionable, Duquette, on Saturday morning I was eating my Cheerios in San Francisco, and I had to turn on the TV and say, you and Jeff Moorhead, the two most boring people in Major League Baseball, sit down and talk about a contract for this goon, Manny Ramirez. Please do not mess up my breakfast like that ever again and sign whatever." So I call up Jeff. I said, "Jeff, I see it was very well received up there in San Francisco. Where do you get a load of this note?" And, Manny, his very first at bat with the Red Sox, he hit a home run. He hit one over the Green Monster. And he kept us interesting and competitive, and he was really a centerpiece for the team to stay competitive during that time and to drive interest in the team, because John Harrington was going to sell the team. So Manny was a key part of that strategy, and he ended up being a real good piece. I think, he and Ortiz together in the middle of the lineup, best dynamic combination in the American League for a long time. And pitchers had to choose between the two-headed monster, which one they were going to face. Not only were they good hitters, but they were power hitters. And the records they put up were second to Gehrig and Ruth in the American League. And, both of those guys, of course, are going to the Red Sox Hall of Fame. But, Manny ended up being a good sign for the Red Sox. He's one of the most unique and interesting players, during his time.
And one more on Manny. I remember you telling me the story about him. A lot of times he was so focused on finding his pitch to hit that he wouldn't always know the count. So what was the conversation like when you asked him about that?
Yeah, you like that story, don't you? Manny being Manny, so Manny hits a home run opening day, and I was relieved. But in his fourth at bat that day, the umpire called ball 4, and Manny got back into the box, and the umpire said, "Manny, you got to go to first base." So I let it go by. We go on the road. Same thing happens again. The umpire calls ball 4. Manny gets back in the box ready to hit. And I'm thinking to myself, what's going on here? So we come home again. It's about the middle of May. It happens again. And Manny gets ball 4, and he gets back in the box ready to hit. The umpire has to tell him to go to first base. So I go down in the clubhouse, and I talk to the manager, Jimmy Williams. I said, hey, Jimmy, I noticed that Manny gets back into the box and gets ready to hit after the umpire calls ball 4. I said, do you know what his thinking is on that? And Jimmy says, no, I don't. I said, can you ask him what his thinking is on that? And Jimmy said, no, I'm not going to do that. So I'm getting a little nervous now because I really need to know this. If somebody asks me, what's up with Manny Ramirez? He keeps getting back in the box after the umpire calls ball 4. So he does it again on the road, and the team comes home, and I said, I'm going to go down and talk to Manny tonight. I got to find out, what's going on. So after the game, I go down to the clubhouse. Everybody empties out. Manny finishes his shower. He's getting dressed. And I go over to his locker. I say, hey, Manny, you got a second? I got a question for you. I said, I've noticed a few times the umpire calls ball 4 and you get back into the box, get ready to hit. I said, what's your thinking there? He goes, I don't keep track of the balls. I said, okay. So I'm not sure what to say next. And then Manny rescues me and he goes, I don't keep track of the strikes either, dude. And I said, okay. And then he goes, until I have 2. And I said, okay. And I put my head down and he goes, hey, Duquette, I'm up there looking for a ball to hit. If I don't get it, I know I got a good chance to get it next time. Isn't that what you're paying me to do? I said, that's right, buddy. You just carry on.
Don't change your approach. Well, Jimmy probably didn't want to jinx it.
Well, how many times did you see Manny Ramirez go up to the home plate and look at a bunch of pitches and walk back to the dugout? He was just up there looking for his pitch to hit. And if you look at Henry Aaron, any of the top RBI guys, they're up there pitch hunting, if you will, right? They're looking for a ball in a certain area of the strike zone, a certain pitch in a certain area of the strike zone in RBI situations, and that's how they make a living. And that's how Manny Ramirez made a living. But he explained it simpler and more concise than anybody I've heard. It's pretty simple. I'm up there looking for a pitch.
Pretty simple.
If I don't get it, I'll go up there looking for the pitch I can hit next time.
Right. I love that approach. That's one of my favorite Manny stories. Let me ask you about another hitter that you pursued during your period as GM there of the Red Sox, the Bernie Williams pursuit. Because I know you and George Steinbrenner had a pretty good relationship, but you tried to sign one of his guys. I know he wasn't happy about it, but it was pretty close to getting done. How close was it? And what can you tell us in the details on that? Yeah,
well, we like Bernie Williams. We saw him all the time. Of course, about 20 times a year, way more times than we really wanted to see him. But, Bernie was a great player. And I knew that he was signed by a great scout, Fred Ferreira, when he was with the Yankees. And Fred worked for me in Montreal. And Fred had a knack for signing not just good players, but, great players. And, He signed Posada with the Yankees. He signed Bernie Williams. They were two of the key guys on their championship teams, up the middle for a long time. So our thinking, and Bernie was a bright kid. He was a smart kid. He was durable. He played a lot of games. And he was a switch hitter with power playing center field. And he's a guy that could hit in the middle of your lineup. So we thought if we got Bernie Williams, we'd put him in the lineup there back-to-back with Nomar, and we'd have a dynamic combination, right? We'd have two guys that could hit for average, could hit for power, could play in the middle of the diamond defensively, and, that would give us an advantage over our rivals. So if I remember right, we made a really good offer to Bernie, and the Yankees were focused on Albert Bell. Albert Bell was a free agent the same year that Bernie Williams was a free agent. And I think the Yankee baseball people had made their last offer to Williams, and they had turned their attention to Albert Bell. And then we increased our offer to Bernie. I don't know. I think the Yankees had offered him like $70 million. We had offered him like 84, 85 million. And I thought we were going to sign him because the Yankees were focused on signing Albert Bell. Well, George wasn't going to let Bernie Williams get away. He knew his value, and even if his baseball people didn't value him, where it was required to sign him, based upon the market that Scott Boras had created for him, George jumped in at the end and got the Yankees away from Albert Bell. I think the Orioles signed Albert Bell. We made Bernie Williams a lot of money that year because we had increased our offer like 17 or 18 million. I think he ended up signing for a couple million more than what we had to offer him. But it was touch and go. I think Bernie wanted to spend his whole career with the Yankees, which what ended up happening.
Did Boras ever send you a thank you note or a cake or something just because you came in and you ran the price up on? No, we know Scott never did that.
Well, the thing was, I thought we had a pretty good chance to sign him, and we knew him as good as the Yankees. That's just the way things work. Albert Bell ended up getting hurt not too long after he signed with the Orioles, so that ended up being a terrific sign for the Yankees, and it shifted the balance of power in the AL East over to the Yankees from the Red Sox.
I can't remember many players going from the Yankees to the Red Sox. They tend to go Red Sox to the Yankees, but they really haven't gone the other way. That's what made Bernie Williams that potential. Yeah,
and Bernie was worth getting involved with because of his unique skill, and he was a good kid. I mean, at that time of his career, I think he was like 28 years old. And he was a free agent. He came up pretty early in his career, and it just didn't work out. But we were in there to sign him for real.
Right. Let me ask you about Pedro Martinez. So you traded for him when he was with the Dodgers coming up. You traded for him from Montreal. That story, we've seen that one before. But you then leave Montreal to become general manager of the Red Sox, your hometown team, and you have the chance to trade for one of the greatest pitchers of a generation, but the greatest pitcher at that time in the league, in the National League, and probably in baseball, in Pedro. And Jim Beattie, I know, was the general manager there. Is there anything unique about that conversation that took place between the two? Because I know you had two young pitchers that kind of fit the criteria that Montreal was looking for.
The first time we traded for Pedro, he was a reliever with the Dodgers. And, he had proven himself out. The second time we traded for him, he had won the National League Cy Young Award, and he struck out over 300. I mean, that's the kind of trade that if you're going to be a general manager, you go to bed at night dreaming about making. Trading for the Cy Young Award winner or acquiring the Cy Young Award winner from the opposite league. And of course, we knew Pedro because when we got him with the Expos, I had Timmy Johnson, who worked for us in the big leagues, and Kevin Kennedy, who worked for us in the big leagues, and they were in the minor leagues, and they had him in the dugout with the Dodgers, and they had recommended him. And after that, Kevin Kennedy and Tim Johnson came to Boston, and I had worked together with those guys in Boston, but I always, remembered their evaluation of the kid, his personal evaluation. And then, he had already proven himself in the National League, and we were looking for a pitcher. We had to replace the innings and the appeal of Roger Clemens, who had left as a free agent the year before. And, it fit the bill. Pedro's agent, Fernando Cuza, was very helpful in getting Pedro to agree to sign long term. But, I mean, that was the trick. The trick of that deal was not so much the talent that we gave up. It was giving up the talent and trying to decide if you're going to be able to sign Pedro long term. And given that Pedro wanted to sign long term with the Expos, but they didn't have the money, I knew that to be a fact. So we had to make some assessment. And John Harrington, to his credit, he went to the expansion draft meeting that year. I think the Colorado and Tampa were the expansion teams that year?
Tampa and Arizona, so it was Colorado and Miami, maybe?
Yeah. Well, anyway, there was an expansion draft, and John Harrington went with us to the expansion draft because we had a chance to close on the deal for Pedro Martinez. And wow. The Yankees were in on the deal. They were trying to get him. And I think Claude Brochu gave us the edge. Claude Brochu, he promoted me to general manager there with the Expos, and I think he directed Jim Beattie to give us strong consideration if the talent was reasonably close, that they would get back in the trade. And I always have a warm spot in my heart for Jim Beattie. He sent us Pedro Martinez, and I thank him about every time I see him, because Pedro ended up being a terrific player for the Red Sox. Not only a great player, but he ended up being a Hall of Famer for the Red Sox, and he's still with the organization.
Yeah, he's one of the all-time greats, no question on that. And obviously, during that period of time, he made you guys competitive as well as Manny did. So you beat out the Yankees on that one. You lost to Bernie Williams, but you got Pedro. That's a pretty good trade-off. Well, when you look at it.
Well, truth be told, when we were trying to sign Pedro, I think the Yankees were still pursuing him. Okay, they thought he was a free agent, even though he was under contract with the Red Sox when we were trying to sign him, because we were getting a lot of interference in our negotiations. But we ended up signing Pedro to a good contract. It ended up being a great contract for the Red Sox and a good contract for Pedro. He got rewarded for significant milestones, which he achieved during the contract, and I think he ended up making over $100 million. But the risk with that is, Pedro is not a very big guy. He wasn't very tall, and the Dodgers let him go in a trade because they didn't think he was going to be durable or a starter. They didn't think he could withstand the rigors of a starting pitcher. But he proved himself in Montreal for sure. And then we took a leap of faith that he would remain healthy, and he really delivered on the contract, and he ended up pitching one of those clinching games in the 2004 World Series. What a great moment for his career. And, he was one of the key pieces for the Red Sox to get over the hump to win the championship. And he to his credit, he did it there in his final year.
Sure. I'm curious, at any because the one thing that stands out, we talked about, these are like impactful players in the major leagues during that period of time. And that's something that, you always did, as part of your legacy. Was there one or two, let's say, just take one guy that maybe you pursued outside of Bernie Williams, or a trade that you pursued that you thought you had and it fell apart, that you can remember?
Yeah. When people ask me that question, I'm sure there was a lot of trades that, we wish we could have made. And, there's a few that we wish we didn't make. Everybody has a few of those skeletons in their closet.
But nothing that stands out to you at the moment. When you can trade a player, for a group of young players that can help your, organization, for a long period of time and set you up for into the future. I think that's a really good opportunity to set your club up. So, but you have to be a non-contender to be in that position. Right.
And personally, I'd rather be in contention every year. I'd rather have a team that the fans are engaged with. I'd rather be in the competitive mode, trying to win and trying to pursue the pennant. Like Brian Sadie in San Francisco, he said it very eloquently. He said, I'm not worried about giving up prospects. We're in the business to try to win a championship. Okay, that's why we come to work every day. That's what the fans want to see. That's what we're here to try to, fulfill the hopes of the ownership group. Personally, I'd much rather be in the position of, being competitive and being in the hunt than to be in that rebuild mode. That's a tough mode to be in. And if you're in it for any period of time, that's very uncomfortable too. And that's not some place the fans want you to be, for sure.
Right, for sure. Well, all right. So you mentioned, Manny Machado was one of those guys that you guys, at the end of his career in Baltimore, you guys fell out of it, and so you were forced to trade him. But I wanted to ask you about Manny Machado, the rookie, kind of coming up. At what point did you know that this guy was going to be the star that he's turned out to be?
Well, I mean, guys like Manny, if you've been in baseball for any period of time, you know guys with that complete level of talent don't come along very often. And in my first spring training with the Orioles, I think that was 2012, we had Manny in the minors, and he was just coming out of A-ball. And we had a game, one of the early games in spring training, and Manny was playing shortstop in a big league game, and he ran down the left field foul line for a pop-up, and he caught it like a wide receiver going down the third baseline. And I said, oh my goodness, not only is this kid big, but he can cover the ground. So, it was pretty obvious to me when the first time I saw him. Well, I mean, one of the most entertaining things for me was to watch him throw. And I've never seen anybody with that kind of arm strength that can throw effectively from so many angles and throw it so fast and accurately across the diamond. But it was pretty obvious to me when I saw Manny run and range for that pop-up that he was a very uniquely gifted player. And then if you watch him take batting practice, he had power to the opposite field. Mm-hmm. Not only did he have the pull power, but when he's right, he's got the power to the opposite field. So, after I saw him range and saw his power to the opposite field, I knew he was a special player. I wasn't sure if he'd be a full-time shortstop in the big leagues or if he'd be a third baseman. But that year that he was slated to go to Double-A, we had him and John Scope. They were both had played shortstop for our A-ball teams the year before. We decided to play them up the middle. Scope would play some short. Manny would play primarily all shortstop. But in the back of our mind, we knew that we needed a third baseman in the big league. And we had gone and we started working him to play at third base in the event that, we would bring him up for the pennant race. And we had J.J. Hardy playing shortstop. J.J. was steady shortstop, very dependable, very reliable, and he was hitting for power. He was hitting like 30 home runs. Right. So Bobby Dickerson went down to Double-A, worked out Manny at third base, gave him some fundamentals, under the radar. And then when it came time to bring him up, we brought him up in the middle of the pennant race. And people said, aren't you worried about bringing up Manny at that age? And I said, well, when I bring up a player, it's not so much the age, it's the skills. And Manny's got the 5 tools, right? I said, I'd be worried if I was bringing up a 1-tool player or a 2-tool player, but I wouldn't worry about Manny. He's got all the skills to be a very solid all-around everyday player. And that played out. I mean, look at Manny's defense. He was a key part of our 2012 team that almost got to play for the pennant. We came pretty close. And then you watched him develop. I think the year after or shortly thereafter, you ended up being the Platinum Glove winner, best defensive player in the league. He's fulfilling all the promise of the skills that he had, to his credit.
Yeah, no question. All right, I had a couple quick ones I want to ask your thoughts on. Who is there outside of Manny Ramirez, best hitter that that you saw, during your time?
During my time as a GM, well,
Yeah.
there's a couple of really gifted hitters that I had the opportunity to work with along the way. Two really uniquely gifted right-handed hitters. Vladimir Guerrero, we signed in Montreal. Actually, that's a Fred Ferreira sign.
It's a Fred sign, yeah.
Yep. He was a right-handed hitter, terrific hitter. I never seen a guy hit so many balls on the fat part of the bat is Vladimir Guerrero. And he and Nomar ended up having very close batting averages over the course of their career. Those are two guys that are very uniquely gifted to hit. Nomar ended up winning a couple of batting titles. We drafted and signed Freddie Sanchez with the Red Sox. He ended up winning a batting title. But probably the most uniquely gifted hitter that I saw as an amateur player was Gary Sheffield when he was 17 years old down in Tampa, Florida. And we went down there to see him. I went down there to see him prior to the draft. That was my first year as scouting director. And I went in to see him in Tampa, and he was pitching one day. And Gary had a great arm, great hands, ended up being a prolific home run hitter. But I think I saw him 4 at-bats. He hit 3 doubles and a home run, every time he squared it up. And he had, the strength in his hands and the wrist that you look for. And as an amateur player, he didn't wrap the bat like this. Yeah, he learned that in the off season when he went to work out with his uncle, Dwight Gooden. And Doc Gooden was working out with Strawberry. And Gary started imitating Strawberry with the wrist, pointing the head of the bat, towards the pitcher. And I saw him the next year in spring training. I said, Gary, where'd you learn that? He goes, I was working out with Straw. I said, Gary, you got a better swing than Straw. I said, you don't need to be doing that. But it ended up being a habit for him. But when he was 17, you look at what he did in the Pioneer League. And then he went to the Instructional League. I think he hit over 400 out in Arizona. But very, very uniquely gifted young hitter. I think we took him like 6th in the draft, and he ended up having a great career. What wasn't great with the Brewers, but by the end of his career, he's one of the top RBI guys in the business.
Yeah, over 500 home runs too. And one more I wanted to ask you, just when it comes to your time with the Orioles, Adam Jones, that big contract extension that you offered, the club offered to him. We always got to talk about Adam. We love Adam, and but what that meant to what he meant to the community, and what he meant to the organization, and some of those teams that went to the postseason during that period of time.
That ended up being a good trade for the Orioles when they picked up Adam Jones. I think they got him from Seattle, maybe. Yeah,
from Seattle for Eric Bedard. Yeah,
Bedard. It was a really good trade. They got. Yeah, Adam and Tillman. And that was a good trade by Andy McPhail, and Dave Engel, I think, helped him on that. But when I was with the Red Sox, we were looking for a young player to build our team around. And we had Pedro, of course, was a pitcher. And we ended up putting a stake in the ground around a core player, and we signed Nomar to a longer-term deal. And that seemed to work out pretty good because we knew he was going into a good part of his career. He's a good everyday player, and our fans liked him. Our fans had connected with him. And when I got to Baltimore, I was thinking about the same type thing. We're going to go through a period here where we're going to try to be competitive. Who's the player that is a good player, a talented player that the fans really like? And that player was Adam Jones. I mean, Adam Jones had made a choice to live in the community. He had married the daughter of a great Amherst football player, Gene Fugit. And I knew Gene, having gone back and met with him. I heard the stories from the coach when I was at Amherst about what a great player Gene Fugit was, and I had followed his career, and I knew Gene. And when I got to Baltimore, Adam was engaged to his daughter. And so now I had inside information, right? I didn't know Adam Jones, but he was part of the family. He was part of the family. And, Adam was interested in a long-term deal. He was living in the community. He made the choice to live in the community. And he was an exciting player, and he was a team leader. He was a team leader. He had a lot of energy. So we made a choice to build the team around Adam, and we ended up having some really good years.
He didn't disappoint. Does he know that his father-in-law helped in consummating that deal, that long-term
deal? Well, his father-in-law had to give him a good recommendation.
He does now. That's true. He does now. He let his daughter marry him.
Yeah, well, I mean, Adam did a lot of good work in the community, and he still does, helping young kids, being a role model and providing an example for kids in the inner city, and then going out and not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. I mean, he went out there and he helped them with a youth center that he provided resource to in Baltimore, and he encouraged young kids and encouraged people to give young kids a chance, like they gave him growing up, and he was a good mentor for young kids coming up to our team. Because the thing about Adam Jones, if you look at his record, I mean, he posts, he's reliable. He wants to be in that lineup, every day. And he ended up becoming a 10-5 man. He had 10 years in the big leagues and 5 with the Orioles. And when I went to Adam with the opportunity that the club wanted to trade his contract to Philadelphia, Adam said, "No, I'm not going." He goes, "My family's here in Baltimore." He said, "We live in Baltimore, and I'm going to stay to the end of my contract." And so he did. So that was good. That was a good sign for the Orioles. Adam had some good years. He won some Gold Gloves. Hit in the middle of the lineup, helped get us to the playoffs, and had a really good career there.
Yeah, he really did. Dan, I always appreciate it. There's a lot of other stories that we can get to. Maybe we'll do that. We'll do this another GM Files down the road. But thanks for giving us a couple of minutes today, and stay tuned. This is Jim Duquette. Stay tuned for another GM Files coming up soon.